Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the essentials of web development, looking towards 2025.
Yeah, we're aiming to give you a solid grasp of how websites are actually built, like from the ground up.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut. We're using a detailed YouTube tutorial transcript as our guide, focusing on the basics, HTML and CSS.
So if you've ever wondered what makes a web page tick, this is for you.
Our mission really is to help you quickly get the core concepts.
We'll start simple with the very first steps and then layer on the structure and the style, the fundamentals.
All right, let's jump in. First up in the source material, setting up that very first web page. Creating a file, saving it, ctrl plus S, cmd plus S, the usual.
Yep. And the interesting part is when you first open that file in a browser,
it's just that blank, right? Or just shows whatever text you type.
Exactly. It's just raw content. The browser, it doesn't know what to do with it yet. It needs interpretation.
And that's where HTML tags come in.
Precisely. Tags are like instructions telling the browser how to display things, what the structure is.
Okay. So the tutorial introduces that basic structure. .jp, HTML, HTML, head, body. Walk us through those again. Why are they always there?
Sure. So .jp HTML just tells the browser, hey, this is modern HTML, HTML5 specifically.
Got it. Like a heads up.
Yeah. Then HTML wraps everything else. It's the main container.
Okay.
Inside that, you've got the head. Now, this stuff isn't visible on the page itself.
Right. That's the metadata, like the page title in the tab.
Exactly. Titles, links to style sheets, character sets, all the behind-the-scenes info the browser needs. Crucial stuff, but not content you see.
Makes sense. The brains of the operation, and then the body. That's where the action is.
That's where everything you do see goes. Your text, images, buttons, all of it. That's the visible web page.
And you have to save your file and then refresh the browser to see changes.
Constantly. Save, refresh. Ctrl plus R, CMD plus R, click the button. You get used to it. It's the basic development cycle.
The tutorial also mentions viewing the page source. Right-click, view page source.
Yeah, super useful. Lets you see the actual HTML the browser's working with. Great for debugging or just understanding how things are built.
And a quick warning in the source, don't put secrets in HTML comments like this claim.
Definitely not. They're hidden on the page, sure, but anyone can see them if they view the source code. So keep confidential stuff out.
Good tip. Okay, so how do we get actual content, like paragraphs, onto the page? The source notes that if you just type lines of text, the browser kind of mushes them together.
It does. It treats line breaks in your code. Mostly it's just white space, like a single space. Reads it linearly.
So not how you typed it, necessarily.
Right. So the tutorial introduces the brie tag first for a line break.
Brie for break. Simple.
Yeah. Simple, yeah, but maybe not the best practice always. It's purely presentational. For actual paragraphs of text, you want to use P tags.
P for paragraph. So you wrap your paragraph text in P and P.
Exactly. That tells the browser this is a distinct block of text, a paragraph.
Right.
And browsers usually add some space above and below paragraphs automatically.
So it's more semantic. It describes the meaning of the content.
Precisely. And the tutorial really pushes using these best practices from the get-go. Leads to cleaner code.
Makes sense. What about headings, like titles and subtitles?
For that, you've got heading tags, H1 down to H6.
6 levels.
Yeah. H1 is your main page title, really important. You should generally only have one H1 per page.
Why just one?
It tells search engines and screen readers this is the main topic of this entire page. It establishes the top level of your content hierarchy.
Okay. And then H2, H3, etc. are for subheadings.
Exactly. Like chapters and sections in a book. They structure your content logically and have SEO benefits too.
Cool. The tutorial then mentions this key idea, separating structure HTML from styling, CSS.
Yes. Super important concept. HTML is for the content and its meaning. CSS, cascading style sheets, is for the how it looks. Colors, fonts, layout.
So you don't put like font colors directly in your HTML tags usually?
You can, but you really shouldn't. Keeping them separate makes everything much easier to manage, especially on bigger sites. Imagine changing a font on 100 pages if it was all in the HTML.
Nightmare. Okay, so CSS handles the visuals. Got it. The source then talks about dividing content up. It mentions div tags.
Right. Div is like a generic container. People use them for everything. Still do sometimes.
But there are newer, better ways.
Yeah. HTML5 introduced semantic tags. Things like section, header, footer, nav for navigation, article for self-contained content.
Why are those better than just a plain div?
They add meaning. Nav tells you immediately, this is navigation. Header is the introductory part. It makes the code clearer for humans, for screen readers, for search engines, better organization, better accessibility, better SEO, win-win-win.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, giving context.
Yeah.
Now let's say we want an About Us page. The source talks about creating a second HTML file, like apropos.html.
Yep, new page, new file.
Yeah.
And you start with that same basic HTML structure.
Yeah.
Doc type HTML, head, body.
And then add your content, like an H1 for About Us and a P with contact info.
Exactly. And don't forget the title tag in the head for the browser tab. Maybe link your favicon again, too, that little icon.
Right. But just having two files isn't enough. You need a way to get between them without typing URLs.
Yes. Links. That's the anchor tag.
The at tag. And it needs an href attribute.
Right. href stands for hypertext reference. It holds the URL or the file path you want the link to point to. So you'd link index.html to apropos.html and vice versa.
So href apropos.html in the a tag on the index page.
Exactly. And href index.html on the about page, that's how you build navigation. Having a clear site structure planned out helps a lot here.
Okay, linking makes sense. Now for menus, the tutorial shows putting links inside p tags first, but says that's not ideal. Why not?
Because semantically, a menu isn't just a series of paragraphs. It's a list of navigation options.
Okay, so use list tags.
Yep. The best way is an unordered list, with each menu item being a list item. Lie.
So all then inside that lie with the link inside, like Leah, ref, homeoli.
Precisely that structure. Ol wraps the whole menu, each lie is an item, and a tag inside the lie makes it a clickable link.
And ol gives bullet points by default.
It does. An ordered list, ol would give numbers. But for navigation, ol is standard. We'll remove the bullets later with CSS.
Okay, so we replace the p tags for the menu with this ol and lie structure, and do that on both pages for consistency.
Absolutely. Consistent navigation is key for user experience. The source even mentions Facebook's language menu as an example of lists in action.
Cool. This leads to talking about conventions. How are they different from official standards, like from the W3C?
Good question. W3C standards are the official rules. Browsers must follow them for things to work reliably. Conventions are more like community best practices, agreed upon ways of doing things to make code readable, maintainable.
So standards are the law, conventions are like good manners for code.
That's a great way to put it. Following conventions makes life easier for everyone working on the code.
Got it. Okay, shifting slightly basic text formatting in HTML. The source mentions I for italics and B for bold.
Yeah, those are the old school tags. They work. It also stresses correct nesting closing tags in the reverse order you open them.
So if you have by text div, that's okay.
That's perfect. But by text B is wrong and can cause problems. Nesting order matters.
Right. But didn't we say styling should be in CSS? Are B and I... Okay.
That's a nuanced point. Nowadays, it's often better to use M for emphasis, usually italics, and strong for importance, usually bold because they're more semantic. But I and B are still widely used. The main point is moving complex styling to CSS.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of CSS, now we finally get into it properly. The tutorial mentions 3 ways to apply it: inline, internal, and external.
Yep. Inline is using the style attribute directly on an HTML tag, like pstyle color.blue.
Okay, just for that one paragraph.
Right. Internal is putting CSS rules inside a style tag within the HTML head. That applies to the whole page.
And external.
That's having a separate .css file, like style.css, and linking it in the head using link-rel style sheet href.
Which one is best practice?
External, definitely. For anything more than a tiny page. It keeps style separate, reusable, much easier to manage across a whole site. You change one CSS file, and the whole site updates.
Okay, external style sheets it is. So we create style.css, maybe put it in a design folder, and link it. The syntax is property.value, right?
Exactly. Like color.red or font size, 16px. You select an element, they give it property value pairs.
Yeah, so the tutorial shows styling an image with width, 100%, using this external CSS.
Yep, a simple example, but shows the power. Now, the style rule is separate from the image tag itself.
How do we tell CSS which element to style? That's selectors, right?
Exactly. Selectors are how you target HTML elements. The simplest is an element selector. Just use the tag name, like P to style all paragraphs or lie to style all list items.
So lie color.blue would make all list items blue.
Yep, but that might be too broad sometimes. You need more specific ways.
Right, like maybe you only want menu list items blue. This leads to class and ID selectors.
Correct. You can add a class attribute to your HTML elements, like class menu item. Then in CSS, you target it with a .menu item.
And you can reuse the same class on multiple elements.
Yes, that's the point of classes.
Yeah.
Reuse styles. IDs are different. You add an add attribute, like add main logo. IDs must be unique on a page.
Only one element can have no logo.
Exactly. And you target it in CSS with a hash symbol, hashtag main logo. IDs are for unique, specific elements.
Okay. Element, class, ID. Any others?
Contextual selectors are really useful, targeting elements based on where they are, like nav targets only tags that are inside a nav element.
Ah, so you could style menu links differently from other links on the page that way?
Precisely. .nav_color.green won't affect links in your main paragraphs. Very powerful for specific styling.
Great. So with selectors figured out, the source shows more CSS properties, especially for text.
Yeah, the basics. Font weight, bold, font style .italic, text decoration .underline, or text decoration. None. To remove underlines from links.
Which is common for menus.
Very common. Also font size, often using px for pixels, like font size, 14px. And font family to choose fonts, like font family. Arial sans serif. The second one is a fallback if Arial isn't available.
Good to have fallbacks. Now, a really fundamental CSS concept, the box model.
Ah, yes, the box model. Crucial. Every HTML element is basically treated as a box.
A box with layers.
Kind of. You have the content itself in the middle. Then around that is padding space inside the box between the content and the border.
Okay, padding is inside.
Then you have the border itself, like a frame. And finally, outside the border, you have the margin space that pushes other elements away.
Content, padding, border, margin. Got it. And block versus inline elements fits in here.
It does. Block level elements like PR or div tend to take up the full available width and start on a new line. Think of them as stacking vertically.
And inline, like span or A.
Inline elements just take up the space their content needs and flow along with the text. They don't force line breaks. Understanding this difference and the box model is key to layout.
We also see background color for setting. Well, background colors. And the source mentions browsers have default margins and paddings.
I do. Things like H1 tags or CO lists often have default margins applied by the browser. You can see these using the browser's developer tools, the inspector.
And it's common to reset these?
Yeah, a lot of developers start with a simple CSS reset, like margin 0, padding 0, 0, to remove all browser defaults and start from a clean slate. Then you add back the spacing you actually want using margin and padding properties.
This selects everything.
Yep, the universal selector. We'll see box sizing later, which often goes with this.
Okay. We also get text align for horizontal alignment, left, center, right, justify. Easy enough to center a title with text align.center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the footer tag comes up for the bottom part of the site. You could style it, maybe give it a different background, smaller text for copyright info.
Practical tip. Just Google copyright symbol to find it easily.
Yeah. Standard developer practice. Then background images are introduced. Background image.jpg, path to image.jpg.
In controlling how it repeats.
Background repeat. No repeat is common. And background size is important. Cover makes the image fill the element, potentially cropping. Contain fits the whole image inside, possibly leaving space.
Cover sounds useful for big header images.
Very. Now, dealing with wide screens, content stretching too far looks bad. The solution. A container div.
So you wrap your main content in div class container.
Usually, yes. Then in CSS, you give that .container class a max width, like max width 1000px.
So it never gets wider than 1,000 pixels.
Right. And to center it, you use margin left.auto, margin right.auto. That automatically calculates equal margins on both sides.
Neat trick. And you can apply this container class to multiple sections.
Absolutely. And you can even add multiple classes to one element, like class container featured section. It gets styles from both.
Flexible. Okay, let's build a fancier header. The source uses a background image on a section. Background size, cover, background position, center.
Standard stuff for a nice full-width header image. Then use padding top and padding bottom on the section to control its height and create space for text inside.
Add an H1 and maybe a span for a slogan. Style the text size, color. But wait, the span sits next to the H1.
Because span is inline by default. If you want the slogan on its own line, you change its display property in CSS display, block.
Making the inline element behave like a block element.
Exactly. Then maybe text align left for the text within the header.
Now, centering things vertically. Notoriously tricky sometimes. Enter Flexbox.
Flexbox to the rescue. It's a layout module you set display.flex on the container element.
And then use properties on the container to align the items inside it.
Yep. Justify content controls horizontal alignment along the main axis center, flex start, flex end, space between, space around.
And vertical alignment.
That's align items for the cross axis. Align items.center is perfect for vertical centering within the flex container. Works like magic compared to older methods.
So Flexbox is great for arranging things in a line, horizontally or vertically.
Primarily one dimension, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fantastic for navigation bars, aligning items side by side, distributing space.
Okay, next we see creating sections for destinations Tokyo, Kyoto, etc., using divs with background images again.
Same pattern. Background image, background size, cover, background position, dot center, set a height.
But repeating all that CSS is tedious.
So you create a common class, like .vel city, put the shared styles there, and apply that class to all the destination divs. Then use unique IDs, #Tokyo, #Kyoto, for the specific background images.
Much cleaner. Now, arranging these destination divs horizontally, flexbox again.
Makes sense? Rep them in a container, maybe #flexboxfill, set display.flex on it.
And they line up side by side. But how to add space between them, margins on each div?
You could. But Flexbox has a better way now. The gap property. Just gap. 20px on the flex container adds 20px space between the items. Much simpler than messing with margins.
Nice. Gap is easier. But what if you need a more complex, two-dimensional layout? Rows and columns.
Now you're talking CSS Grid, another powerful layout module. You set display.grid on the container.
And Grid lets you define columns and rows explicitly.
Yes. Grid template columns is key. You can define column widths like grid template columns, 1F, 1FR, 1F4, which means 3 equal width columns taking up the available fractional space.
FR. Or repeat 3, 1FR for the same thing.
Exactly. You can define rows too with grid template rows. And gap works here too for spacing between grid cells, both rows and columns.
How do you place items in the grid? Can they span multiple cells?
They can. You use properties on the items themselves, like grid column start, 1 grid column end, 3 to make an item span from the start of column 1 to the start of column 3, so columns 1 and 2.
Wow, okay. So you can create really intricate layouts. The tutorial shows spanning Kyoto across 2 columns.
Yep. And it stresses that grid properties apply to the direct children of the grid container. So they adjusted the HTML to wrap the images into tags and applied the grid to those tags.
So the whole clickable area is part of the grid item. Smart.
Makes sense.
They add more destinations than a see more link below. Initially, it sits weirdly on the left.
Default inline behavior again. The source shows a quick fix with inline styles. Yeah. Text align, right? Margin top, 15px. Not ideal long term, but quick.
For a better look, they add an arrow icon using SVG. Just paste the SVG code into the HTML.
You could do that, yeah. SVGs are great because they scale perfectly.
But aligning the arrow nicely next to the see more text needs help.
Flexbox again. Put the text in the SVG inside a tag, then set display flex, align items .center, gap 5px on the tag itself.
Vertically aligns them, adds a small gap.
Nice. And you can change the SVG color using the fill attribute.
Usually, yes. You can edit the fill property right in the SVG code or target it with CSS. They also suggest defining a primary link color in the CSS. Okay, adding some interaction. Hover effects. The hover pseudo class in CSS.
Right. You define styles specifically for when the mouse is over an element, like button.hover, background-color.blue.
And the transition property makes the change smooth.
Exactly. Transition. Background color 0.3's ease makes the color fade over 0.3 seconds instead of snapping instantly. Much nicer feel.
You can transition other things too, like the gap on the see more link.
Yep. Lots of properties can be transitioned. The source also mentions visited for styling links you've already clicked.
And adding shadows. Box shadow.
Box shadow adds depth. The syntax lets you control horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, spread radius, color. You can make subtle or dramatic shadows.
Okay, final touches. Removing the underlines from links, text decoration, none.
Standard practice for navigation usually.
Then the menu moves from the header to the footer.
Common pattern. Footer gets styled.
Yeah.
Remove list bullets, list cell, remove default padding. Or
and use flex box on the tool in the footer to make the menu items horizontal.
Yeah, display.flex, justify content, space around or space between, works well to spread them out.
Add a logo image to the footer, style its width, maybe display.block to handle spacing. Use align items.center on the footer's flex container to vertically align the logo and the menu list.
Sounds like a standard clean footer layout.
Now, the really crucial part, responsive design, making it work on phones and tablets.
Absolutely essential today. The tool for this is media queries in CSS.
At media screen and max width 768px?
Exactly. That block of CSS rules only applies when the screen width is 768 pixels or less. You create different rules for different screen sizes.
So for smaller screens, you might reduce header padding, make fonts smaller.
Yep. Adjust sizes, spacing, Common patterns include stacking things vertically that were horizontal, like those destination images use flexDirection.column inside the media query.
Same for the footer content. Stack the logo and menu using flexDirection.column and maybe align items.center.
Good approach for mobile footers. Also, often you'll remove the max width from the main container on small screens, so content uses the full width.
Okay. Then there's this box sizing issue. Padding adding to the total width.
Yes. By default, an element's width is just the content width. Padding and border are added to that, making the element bigger than you might expect.
Which can break layouts.
It can. The solution is box sizing. Border box. This tells the browser to include padding and border within the element's defined width and height.
Much more intuitive, and the recommendation is to apply it to everything.
Very common practice. Box sizing, border box, right at the top of your CSS. Saves a lot of headaches.
Okay, final optimization bits. The viewport meta tag in the head.
Meta name, viewport content width, device width, initial scale 1.0. Absolutely vital for mobile. Tells the browser to set the viewport width to the device width and use an initial zoom level of 1. Without it, mobile browsers often try to show the whole desktop layout, just zoomed out.
And the character encoding, meta sure set, UTF-8.
Also essential. Ensures text displays correctly, handles different languages and symbols, standard practice.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot. We went from a blank file to basically structuring and styling a simple, responsive web page.
We've really covered the core fundamentals. HTML for structure and meaning, CSS for presentation, selectors, the box model.
Layout with Flexbox and Grid, which are huge.
Huge game changers for layout, yeah. And then making it responsive with media queries.
Key aha moments for me were definitely understanding how the browser thinks, that separation of structure and style, and seeing how powerful Flexbox and Grid are, and realizing responsive isn't an afterthought, it's essential.
Absolutely. And like the source material says, this is the foundation. Practice is key now. Mess around, build things.
For sure. It equips you with those basic building blocks.
Exactly. And now you can start thinking about how to combine these concepts to build much richer, more complex sites. It's a journey, for sure.
A journey that starts right here. Thanks for walking through that with me.
My pleasure. It's exciting stuff once you get the hang of it.